Is that it can mask a cancer on a mammogram. So because a cancer comes up as white, the density comes up as white, it's like trying to find a polar bear in a snowstorm. Breast cancer detection can be assisted by AI. Let's start a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really what it was about, was providing information to the community. So that campaign ended up reaching 7 million Australians.
Wow.
And I've never had a shortage of people who have helped.
Yeah.
And that's what made it possible.
Well, Wendy, thank you for joining us at Adelaide. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat today. I think this is a very important conversation to have as well. Could you start by telling us a bit about your role and also your background, how you got to this point?
Thanks, Josh. Really excited to be here and have a chat with you. So my role is really as a breast biologist, and I study breast cancer risk factors and how the breast works during development, particularly during puberty, but also how it functions over a woman's life course, including development during pregnancy and lactation. And through this research, we really want to understand the underlying biology behind breast cancer risk factors and other disease states such as mastitis, which occurs in women during lactation. Mm-hmm. So really it's about understanding the different types of cells in the breast, mm-hmm. how they communicate with each other and how they grow and develop over the life course and predisposed to disease.
Mm-hmm. And would you mind telling us a bit about your career and the different phases that led you up to this point?
Yes, so there's a lot to tell. I mean, I've been in this business for quite a long time, but I did a Bachelor of Science and then ended up doing honours in obstetrics and gynecology, mm-hmm. understanding how the ovary functions. Mm-hmm. But I was always really interested in reproductive biology as well as immunology, because I did immunology as part of my undergraduate degree. And I became really excited about the interface between those two. Mm-hmm. So how the immune system works within the reproductive system. Okay. So I did my PhD with Professor Sarah Robertson many years ago now. I think I graduated in 2002. Mm-hmm. And that really then led on to my interest in the mammary gland and breast biology, because part of my PhD, I saw that there was a gap in our understanding of how the mammary gland works in the context of how the immune system was functioning in the breast. And realising that there was very limited research in Australia and actually internationally, and that could be a niche for me to develop my research. Mm-hmm. So I was very fortunate. I got an NHMRC CJ Martin Fellowship, mm-hmm. and travelled to New York to the Albert Einstein College of Medicine and did my postdoctoral studies under Jeffrey Pollard, mm-hmm. who was one of the pioneers of understanding how the mammary gland functions, and particularly cells such as macrophages. Yep. So he had really done that seminal work. So I joined his laboratory, and that's where I learnt how to do mammary gland biology, how to study it in culture systems and in animal models. And then I brought that back to Adelaide to start establishing myself as this breast biologist.
And did you feel that when you went to the US, was there a big difference between your work in Australia, or just how the community and the society in Australia dealt with breast diseases versus in the US, or was it pretty similar?
Oh, I mean, the American healthcare system is just so different to what we have here. I think that's very evident in living there. Because you've lived a little bit in America as well.
Yeah, I was just in LA just last year.
Yeah, so what really was very striking was the access to healthcare. Yeah. And we have so much better access here with our public health system. And experiencing that as a foreigner coming in. Mm-hmm. Now, I had health insurance, which was part of my employment. Yeah. But there was still a lot of barriers to getting access to healthcare. Mm-hmm. And for for breast health and breast screening, that's really evident. And actually that's become quite a big part of my job. Back then it wasn't. You know, back then it was really about biology, and I went into the lab every day and lived that postdoc life. But the differences are really quite stark.
So once you got back to Australia, did you continue in a similar researcher role, or did you start doing your community work or community engagement right away?
No, so I really started my lab as a mammary gland biology lab, and I was fortunate enough to bring back some of the animal models which I had been working with and developed in my time in New York. So they let me import those models, and I got to work starting to investigate them, and that really formed the basis of the research that I started as a senior author on publications rather than the first author or middle author. But I have to say that right from the beginning I was very interested in the community outreach part of being a scientist. When I did my PhD, there was a senior PhD student in the lab I was working in, Sarah Keenahan. She was Sarah Hudson back then, but she is now a very well-known science communicator. But she really was very passionate about making sure that the community were informed and engaged with research. And I really took that on as well. You know, I think we have a responsibility as scientists. We take public funding, whether it's through community donations or from the government, and we have a responsibility to make sure that they are informed of our research and engaged and have the opportunity to contribute. And so that was really quite important, I think, looking back on it, and shaped a lot of how I've thought going forward about our relationship with the community as scientists. I'm not a natural when it comes to giving media interviews. In fact, it really scares me. But I did a lot of training. So there's training courses that they can teach you how to do media, and also experience. Now, I don't think that I'm an expert at all, but I have given a lot of media interviews now, and hopefully gotten better as I've gone along.
Now, so
I don't feel like an expert, and I think I still have a lot to learn, but it's something that I think is really important, and it's something that I've deliberately worked at.
So how have, throughout the course of your career, how has community communication or engagement, how have your approaches to that changed as you've gone in your career?
It's probably grown. Coming from a biology background, we didn't really see the community as being, or that engagement as being a two-way street. When I started, I've talked about how we needed to be communicating with the community, but there wasn't the expectation that it would come back. And that has really changed a lot in the last 20 years, and rightfully so. I think it's much better that we are listening more to the community, and it has really affected my research. I was interested in learning more about, particularly, about the women who had experienced breast cancer and understanding their experience. And so when I started as so I got an early career fellowship from the National Breast Cancer Foundation. And with that more, I guess, because it was coming from a community organisation that took public donations, I felt I needed to understand better, the drivers for what that community was wanting. And so I started very simply. There were a few people I knew who had wives who had breast cancer, or friends who had had breast cancer, and I asked if I could talk to them, and just sat down and had a coffee and said, can you tell me a bit about your journey and your experiences? Just to start learning about what those experiences were and what their concerns were, so that I could just have a better foundation and understanding about the community that I was, working for.
And if somebody in the community now wants to give their opinion or give their voice or feedback to you or anybody involved in your work or your field, what are the best ways for them to do that sort of thing?
Well, I've had quite a few people just reach out to me directly. And that's actually now for me a really rewarding part of my job is talking to and listening to the community. There's also a really great national organisation called Breast Cancer Network Australia who advocate to and support women with breast cancer and men with breast cancer. They're a really great organisation as well, and there are a lot of other organisations, so Cancer Council as well, and Cancer Voices. So there are ways for people to reach out and get involved. The Hospital Research Foundation as well has connected me with a number of people who have had breast cancer experiences, and I've met with them. But this has really just evolved so much for me, even in the last 10 years. So I was primarily a breast cancer biologist, a breast biologist, and one of the areas that I was working in was breast density. So breast density is the white and bright that you see on an X-ray mammogram. The brighter and whiter the mammogram is, the denser it is. And this was known for two things. One of them is that it can mask a cancer on a mammogram. So because a cancer comes up as white, the density comes up as white, it's like trying to find a polar bear in a snowstorm. But the other thing is that it's a breast cancer risk factor. Now, this was work that started 50 years ago with John Wolfe when he made this discovery about breast density being a risk factor, but it was argued about for about 30 years in the literature because there were other researchers that were arguing that it wasn't really a risk factor, it's just that there was this masking effect of breast density. So the field went back and forth and it was controversial for a long time. And then in about 2006, there was a huge meta-analysis done, which really put to rest the fact that, okay, breast density, it does mask cancers, yes, but it is also above that, on top of that, a breast cancer risk factor. For me, as a biologist, very exciting to have a new risk factor to study. Because as soon as there's a new risk factor, what is the biology of that? Why would breast density be associated with this increased risk of cancer? And because of my foundation in how the immune system works in the breast, I immediately started thinking, it's how the immune system works. And what we're seeing there is fibrosis driven by macrophages, inflammation associated with that risk. And that was the work that I started to get really excited about and started to investigate. Very fortunate how we ended up managing to put those things together. I was already interested in macrophages, and we had a mouse model which I had brought back from the US, which was overexpressing a particular chemoattractant called CCL2 in the mammary gland, and we were doing some research on that. At the same time, I was collaborating with a team at QUT, which was led by Rick Thompson, and a team at the Peter Mac Cancer Centre, that was Cara Britt. And the three of us were working on this approach to studying breast density, which was using image-guided biopsies of breast tissue. So the breast tissue would be collected from surgery and it would be sliced into 1 centimetre slices, x-rayed, and then you would see the high and low dense regions, and you could do a biopsy and then compare those two samples together.
Yeah, wow.
And so we were working on that, and this was really, Rick Thompson had started this work and getting the biopsies together, and then we started, the three of us, working on different aspects of the biology of those samples. And we were seeing that there were increases in macrophages in the high dense tissue. And at the same time, I had a student looking at this CCL2 in this mouse model. And what we saw, you know, it's one of those things where you look at a thin section and you don't even need a microscope to see it.
Okay, yeah.
That there was this increase in the stroma and the density of that tissue. And so we were sort of seeing the same thing in the paired samples and in the mouse model.
Yeah.
And that was our first really exciting discovery, was that we were seeing increased low-level chronic inflammation in the mammary gland of mice that was increasing their cancer risk. And we were seeing something similar in the breast tissue in humans. I was really excited about this, you know, as you can imagine. We hadn't published it yet, but there was a conference in Kingscliff, which was called the Y Study Mammographic Density Conference. Quite a small conference. It was about maybe 40 people attending.
Oh, yeah, that is small.
But very specialist, all about breast density from different angles. So it was biologists, but it was also epidemiologists, radiologists attending as well. And I was really excited I was going to go along and present my amazing discoveries. So at that meeting, I did present it. I was very excited, but I also heard a talk from a community representative.
Okay.
And she talked about the women's perspective on breast density. And what she talked about were the changes that had occurred in America. So they were mandating with legislation, so legal obligation to report breast density to women when they have a mammogram.
Because I think an important thing to mention is, can women feel breast density?
No, they can't.
Yeah.
So the only way a woman's going to know that she has high breast density is if her doctor tells her after she has a mammogram.
Yeah.
And in America, they hadn't been telling women their breast density and then giving them the all clear. They have a screening mammogram. They say, no, it's clear, you don't have any cancer. And sometimes women would then detect a lump or have some other concern, and they would be diagnosed with a progressed breast cancer. Or stage 3 or stage 4 cancer.
And it was obviously a lot later than it could have actually been intervened.
That's right, that's right. And so in these cases, women who were having regular screening mammograms for years always came back negative. And then, so there was a case where it was just 6 weeks after one of these all clears, a woman gets diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. That was Nancy Capello. She was the first one in America. She really started this change, this movement. And she asked the question, well, why wasn't it detected on my screening mammogram? And the answer was, well, you have high breast density, so it was masked. And her response was, well, I would have liked to have known that because I could have had an ultrasound instead, you know, or taken other steps to look after her breast cancer screening. And so she started advocating for women to be notified of their breast density. She didn't get much love from the clinicians at the time.
Okay, why was that?
So breast density notification is really quite a complex topic. That's one hand, is notifying women so that they can be more aware of their risks and manage their breast cancer screening better. But there are some really, complex issues behind that. So it's not quite as simple as that. One of them is that breast density is not always accurately reported. So breast density comes in 4 categories, so A, B, C, D. A being the lowest category and D being the highest. at the time, there was only subjective measures for breast density categorisation. So it's the radiologist looks at the mammogram and there's some criteria and they say, okay, you're category C or you're category D. And different radiologists can give different grading.
Yeah, and I assume that even biases with the imaging or different factors with the exposure.
That's right. So which machine the image is taken on can also affect that.
Yes.
So radiologists didn't want to be giving women information that might not be correct.
Yeah.
You know, it's not so definitive as saying, you know, this is your density.
Yeah.
And if you're making decisions then about what to do with that information, you want to be basing it on something that's accurate.
Yeah.
The other issue then is what to do with the information. So you can look back and say, well, I would have liked to have known so that I could get an ultrasound or an MRI. But if you are having a screening mammogram, you don't have breast cancer, you are perfectly healthy, you don't have any breast cancer symptoms. So having extra tests like an ultrasound or MRI in that context opens the door for potentially false positives and unnecessary biopsies, going down paths which might not actually be in a person's best interest.
Yeah.
So there were these legitimate concerns about breast density notification, but there was also the flip side of it, in the women that had been negatively impacted by not being told their breast density.
Yeah, I feel like this, because of this sort of complexity, it could impact trust in a lot of these women. Either because they've been told something that they later found out was incorrect, or because they had something that was missed. Could you talk more a bit about how we can actually build trust in the community? Yeah,
so trust is really foundational here, and it's foundational to what we do as scientists and in how clinicians interact with their patients. Patients need to trust their doctors to take their advice and to put themselves into their hands. And what was happening here was a woman would have these screening mammograms which she was recommended to do by her doctor, which then weren't effective in detecting a breast cancer. And then she would find out it's because of my breast density, which I hadn't been told about. And this is at the very time she's had a breast cancer diagnosis and all of the upheaval which is going to be happening in her life with that. And then having then the challenge to the trust that she has in her doctors at this time when she needs to trust them to be recommending treatment. So it can be particularly damaging to be then challenged with that challenge to your trust at the same time as having this life-changing diagnosis. And so this was what was explained to me from the perspective of a woman when I had always really only heard of the breast density issues from the sort of more scientific medical perspective. You know, that it's unclear what to do with this information. So it was really eye-opening for me to hear about it from the women's perspective. And it probably, I mean, I guess looking back, it really shaped what, you know, my whole career after that. At that conference, I remember just thinking very deeply about what she had said. I went for a walk along the beach on my own in the evening and was really thinking, well, what can we do? We've heard about what happened in America. And because in America they didn't really get the engagement with the doctors and the scientists, they went to the politicians. And the politicians put in legislation for breast density notification. We don't want something like that happening in Australia, you know, and we can learn from that experience. And what I was thinking was, well, we need to be engaging with the community before we've got the answers. And bringing them along and sharing the conversation with the community, rather than what we were doing was trying to figure it out behind the scenes.
Yes.
And I became very strongly, I guess, feeling that it was a responsibility that we had to engage the community on this. I was also aware that I'm a biologist, you know, I don't work in public health, and no one would expect me, you know, to have that responsibility as a biologist. But then thinking about it for myself and feeling that, I guess, you know, while I'm not a public health expert, I am a breast density expert. And that maybe, you know, it is my responsibility, even though a lot of people might not think that it is.
So you were talking a bit about how you had, after the conference, realised that it was important to have a community engagement stream within your career and within your work. And could you tell me a bit more about how that came out, and after you realised that there was an important voice coming from you as a breast density expert, could you tell me a bit more about how you implemented that?
So this, the patient representative who was talking at the conference did stimulate a lot of people to start talking about this other perspective. And I remember talking to a couple of colleagues at dinner about it. So that was Rick Thompson and Honor Hugo. And we really started talking more openly about breast density and running some media campaign to lift the lid, you know, open that can of worms and start a conversation. And thinking that we would probably want to be doing that as a group rather than as individuals, and putting together a cohesive story rather than, you know, sort of dotted about. And after my walk on the beach, I happened to walk past a restaurant and look in, and I saw John Hopper, who was the convener of the conference. And I thought, oh, I've got to go in and talk to him as well. So we ended up forming a group from that conference. It was 6 scientists across 5 different institutions. And we called ourselves Informed. This was a name that Rick Thompson came up with. Information Forum on Mammographic Density. And we started having regular meetings, planning a public awareness campaign, which I ended up leading through University of Adelaide. And we had a lot of help in developing this campaign. Keep in mind, no one had really heard of breast density outside of the field, so community had no knowledge or conversation about it yet. And so we were really going to be providing some pretty potentially inflammatory information. We wanted to make sure that the information was provided in the right way. You know, so start the story or start the conversation going in framed well. We were conscious that if we framed it badly, that this could have negative consequences. If we framed it in a way that caused women to be really angry that breast screen wasn't notifying them of their breast density, that might drive women away from breast screen. Breast screen is where women go to have early detection of breast cancer. You know, that would have been a bad outcome if we had driven people away from trusting the institution that was helping to save their lives. But we still needed to get the information out. So we engaged with quite a wide variety of experts in media and community engagement. I was a fellow of the Hospital Research Foundation at the time, and they have really great media engagement.
Yeah.
Fiona Smithson was one of their main media engagement people, and she gave us a lot of advice about how to set that tone of that first sort of news story. And we also had a lot of help from the media office in the University of Adelaide.
Yeah.
And David Ellis particularly was really a big part of developing our media campaign.
And could you talk a bit more about what the different components of the campaign were?
So the centre of it was our media release.
Yeah.
And we had collaboration from all of those participating institutions around Australia.
Yeah. Wow.
And we were going to have people speaking in different states, different experts in different states speaking. And we had the university banner on the university homepage turned pink for the day.
Yeah.
We had an article in The Conversation.
Yeah.
We had a News Corp exclusive, which was really kind of probably the big breaking story aspect. Sue Dunlevy was the journalist who covered that. She interviewed me the week before the media release came out.
Okay.
And so she had time to formulate the story.
Yeah.
We had some community representatives speaking in the story as well. And we thought that was really important to have them involved to help set the right scene for how that public conversation was going to proceed.
Yeah.
So at the time, Breast Screen WA were reporting breast density to their clients.
Yeah.
And we had someone who had been notified they had dense breasts who could then speak about that experience and put people's mind at ease that it's just, some information that was helpful to her, but didn't then cause any further problems. It was helpful information.
Yeah.
And we also had someone speaking on early detection of breast cancer. So she had had her breast cancer caught early by breast screen.
Yeah.
And she spoke really positively about early detection and the importance of getting screening mammograms. So those two perspectives really did help us with our media campaign. And we also had a website that we developed to support this. How this website came about was kind of interesting.
Okay.
So we were all working on the media campaign, and I was talking a lot to people around BHI about what we were doing. And there was a PhD student in someone else's lab, Annetta Zisk, and she thought this was really interesting, and she said to me, you should have a website for this, so a resource that people can then refer to get the information. And I said, oh yes, that would be good, but we don't have any budget for that, and I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I could put it together for you.
Okay, well.
And I said, do you know how to do that? And she said, no, but I've always wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And I still think of that because I think it really reflects what scientists do, and one of our strengths is that we can learn what we don't know.
Yeah.
No, that's really what we learn as PhD students, is if there's something you want to do and you don't know how to do it, you can find out, you can teach yourself, or you can get help.
Yeah. So is that website still up, and can people get resources?
Yes, yes. So she developed the website, or the backbone of it.
Yeah.
It's our Informed. So I informed, but without the E. So informd.
Yeah.
.org.au.
Okay.
So she developed the website. We had all sorts of excitement trying to get it online.
Yeah.
As a bunch of scientists, you can imagine.
Yeah.
No idea what we were doing, but we got help. We called different people and tried to figure out, DNS router.
Okay, yeah.
There was some issue with that we had to figure out. But we got it up and running.
Yeah.
And it then actually we got some professional help
Yeah.
a couple of years ago to remodel it
Okay.
with some funding that we got from a Centre of Research Excellence.
Right.
So it looks much prettier now than it
Okay.
did, but it got the information out there.
Yeah.
And the banner of that initial website was, let's start a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really what it was about, was providing information to the community.
And what are some of the impacts that you've seen since your campaign, your awareness campaign to the public?
So that campaign ended up reaching 7 million Australians.
Wow.
And, it did start a conversation.
Yeah, that's a massive impact.
It was. And after that, I started getting contacted
Yeah.
by women who knew about breast density because they'd had a breast cancer which hadn't been detected on their mammogram.
Yeah.
And so they had the experience of breast density from that women's perspective.
Yeah.
And so I sort of started then engaging with them more and understanding what they were going through and talking to them, and a number of them wanted to advocate for change.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I did was I helped them, just giving them information.
Yep.
If they were writing a letter to their state politician,
Yeah.
or to breast screen, I would help them, make sure that it was evidence-based,
Yeah.
give them some references that they could use to support their argument,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But it was also, what I was really struck by, and what I found just absolutely fascinating, was, you had on one hand these community members who were incredibly passionate about changing policy,
Yeah.
and that breast density should be told to women, and that it was, I guess they felt it was their information,
Yeah. Definitely.
their medical information, and that there should be that sharing. And even though I explained to them, some of the reasons why that clinicians were reluctant to tell them their breast density, they still believed that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, the clinicians who were sure that it was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
And so there was these two perspectives that were absolutely, fundamentally opposed to each other, and yet both were completely legitimate and seemed right.
Yeah.
And you could think one way or you could think another way, and you could be convinced
Yeah.
of either way. And I thought, actually, this is actually the central thing here.
Mm-hmm.
This is a question of ethics.
Mm-hmm.
What's right? And so I thought, well, we need to do research on that,
Yeah.
and actually start to delve into that.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. I had no idea how to do ethics research, where to start.
Yeah.
But I managed to find a few experts around the place. So Wendy Rogers and Stacey Carter are medical ethics experts in Australia. And I started reaching out to them and learning more about what ethics was and how it related to breast cancer screening and public health, clinical ethics versus health system ethics.
Yeah.
And it's a really fascinating area. I did learn a lot.
Okay.
And we held a national stakeholder engagement workshop here in Adelaide, here at the BHI. 50 people attended from all across Australia.
Yeah.
It was patients who had been impacted by breast density. It was policymakers, clinicians, scientists, all together,
Okay.
all in one room with different
That'd be
views.
interesting.
Yes. And my postdoc at the time, Pallavi Dasari, was the convener of the conference. She's got a really great way about her in managing people's, helping to manage people's perspectives in terms of giving people the opportunity to air their views, but keeping it respectful, because we didn't want this workshop to get out of hand.
Well, you want it to be productive ultimately.
Exactly. And so that was a really fantastic day. Everyone had the chance to give their opinions.
Yeah.
And we really did get into the details of what was going on and the different perspectives and ethical underpinning of those perspectives. And there was one presenter who was his wife had been had a breast cancer missed, and he was advocating for policy change, and he spoke, and the title of one of his slides was betrayal. And this was his and his wife's perspective, that they had been betrayed by the system. And I spoke to a couple of the clinicians later who had attended, and they were quite shocked, because they hadn't really. I mean, they knew that it was a problem, but to hear that personal perspective and to have it so strongly presented like that wasn't. You know, they hadn't quite seen it from that perspective as strongly put as it was at that meeting.
Okay.
No one at that meeting changed their perspective. So you came out with the same perspective that you went in, but a better appreciation of the other side. And we published a paper from that workshop which outlined both of the perspectives. And trust was a really important part of that perspective, that it was affecting people's trust, and it wasn't giving them the chance to be involved in decision making.
Then after all of this work, did health policy change as a result, or how did the actual formal structures around the healthcare system, how were they evolving during all of this?
Yeah, so it was really evolving along different paths that ended up really coming together. One of the key things was that the issue of the subjective measurement was addressed. So there are computational tools that can more objectively measure breast density and give you a much more accurate result than the subjective assessment by the radiologist. So there was no longer this concern about being inaccurate with the measurement. There was also work which was initiated by Breast Screen South Australia, which was doing a pilot study to introduce breast density notification and then track the outcomes and women's responses to that. I wasn't involved in that study. That was something done by Breast Screen South Australia. So that was happening in one way, and then there was the patient advocates who were pushing that dial, and not one, not two. They were coming from a whole lot of different areas around Australia, contacting their local breast screen in their state, contacting their politicians, contacting Cancer Australia, and each of them pushing for the policy change. So, and every time I would meet with someone from Breast Screen, there was there's a lot of talk from community about this. And so, and I know some of them worked very hard and were quite dejected. They felt like they weren't making a difference. But now when we look back, I think we can say each of them did their bit and pushed that dial a little bit. And what we actually had happen last year was Breast Screen Australia changed their policy position. So, and before last year, their position was to not notify women of their breast density. They changed that in the middle of last year to say that women should be notified of their breast density when they have a screening mammogram.
Okay. And what do you think was the tipping point for that change? Overall, was it just so many people communicating with them after becoming more aware about this issue, or was it just a matter of things evolving over time?
I think it was a whole lot of different things, and it was probably quite a long time coming in the way when you look back on it. A key thing was after the Breast Screen South Australia pilot study,
Yeah.
they had enough evidence that it was an appropriate thing to do.
Yeah.
And so Breast Screen South Australia began notifying women in 2023.
Okay. Yeah.
And then Breast Screen Victoria, on the basis of that data, also started notifying. And then it got to a point where there were more states that had either implemented it or planned to than weren't.
Okay.
And so that was probably the tipping point.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the room, so I can't tell you why.
Yeah.
But it was building for a while. And all of these changes were really underpinned by that community advocacy.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And since that policy change, have you seen any effects come out? I know it's not been a long time, but have you seen anything that you've noticed?
Well, there's a lot more talk about breast density and a lot more interest in it from women who are attending breast screen.
Yeah.
Now that everyone is being notified, and so in South Australia and the states that have followed, they're notified A, B, C or D, so they get told their breast density category.
Yeah.
And then they're taking in that information and doing a range of things. It's not one size fits all for those for what to do next.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more women going to see their GP
Yeah.
and looking for supplementary screening as well.
Yeah.
And another big change is that the Department of Health released late last year their guidance for GPs, which outlines the which women should be given opportunities for supplementary screening and what that supplementary screening might look like.
And if GPs or even other healthcare professionals or even just people in general who aren't breast specialists, if they want to learn a bit more about this topic, could you recommend some resources that they could look up?
I can. So our website, and we aim to keep that updated. All of these changes, as you can imagine, you know, we aim to keep our website up to date, and we have a resources page which has all of the links to all of the different bits of information that people can find, and we make sure that that's got the latest information on it. And actually our website has been a bit of a struggle to keep updated. I'm a scientist, it's not something that I have a lot of time to put in that work. It's maintaining a website is a lot of work, keeping it up to date. So we've just recently launched a public company, Informed Limited, and this is a not-for-profit organisation. We're applying to the Australian Charities Not-for-Profit Commission for recognition as a charity, which is something that is in progress at the moment. But we're hoping with this we can get some more funding to support that website and keep it current and keep it sort of on the list of resources that people can go to for breast density information.
Definitely. Well, I'll share it for what it's worth.
Thank you. Thank you.
And obviously, one thing that makes it hard to keep up to date is that things are evolving. Probably the biggest thing that's being discussed now is AI and particularly how that's impacting healthcare. Could you talk a bit about how the advent of AI is affecting your field, particularly in breast density?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it is changing a lot. So, the change to report breast density is really the biggest change that's happened to the breast screen program since it started in the early 90s. And now I think it's, there's going to be now more changes that are happening, and AI is probably a big part of that in the future. Not quite yet, but there is research underway, in various breast screen programs as well as internationally to look at how AI can be implemented. And this could be in various ways. One of them is that breast cancer detection can be assisted by AI. and there are a number of different models there. Some have been implemented overseas already, and some are implemented in private radiology practice within Australia as well. Companies that specialise in software that can help circle regions within the mammogram for a radiologist to pay more attention to.
Yeah.
So assisting in breast cancer detection, potentially saving radiologists time and changing that workflow.
Yeah.
At the moment, there are 2 readers, so the mammogram gets read by 2 people independently of each other. If they both agree, that's the result. If they disagree, it goes to a 3rd reader.
Yeah.
AI can assist that, potentially help with that workflow to reduce the amount of time that radiologists are spending on the mammograms.
Yeah.
The other way that AI could be changing breast cancer screening is through detecting changes that occur in a mammogram which might be leading to an increased chance of the woman being diagnosed later of breast cancer.
Yeah.
So these are changes which we can't detect by eye, but that AI is starting to show promise to be able to detect. So those regions of interest that I just spoke about, where the AI might circle an area for the radiologist to pay more attention to that potentially could be cancer.
Yeah.
When they're not cancer, they can be regions where there are still changes, they're not cancer yet.
Yeah.
And so that gives us an opportunity to identify women who don't have breast cancer but are at risk of developing it in the next 5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
And then what can we do to help prevent breast cancer in those women?
So Informed sounds, well, it's a great initiative, but it sounds like it required a lot of different people having important input. Could you tell me a bit more about this really diverse group of people who got this together?
Yes. So we started as 6 academic researchers. So Jennifer Stone was a really key person to help us get going, and she continues to be a really important part of Informed. And John Hopper, Cara Britt, Rick Thompson and Honor Hugo, we were the original 6. And then a couple of years into that work, we recruited a couple of really key people. Gail Ward, who was a program manager for Breast Screen Tasmania, came on board. It was really great to have her involvement because we understood more about the public health perspective, and she really helped us navigate that. And then Gerda Evans, who was our community advisor. Gerda has a very long voluntary career in breast cancer advocacy, and as a representative, she's worked for Breast Cancer Network Australia as a volunteer for many years, really pushed forward research and advocacy, and she was actually given an OAM last year for her services to that field. So we had a really great group, very diverse. We had the epidemiologists, the biologists, and then the public health and community advisors as well. And since then we've also started working with the Australian Breast Density Consumer Advisory Council, which is an initiative that my colleague Jennifer Stone originally set up in 2019. And they're a group of community advisors from all around Australia, and they support breast density research and advocacy. And actually they're a really great group to be working with. I'm their scientific advisor on that group, and it's convened by the co-chairs are Jennifer Stone and Gerda Evans. They're actually now doing a lot of advocacy and published a paper last year, so they've really pushing forward with the community perspective on breast density, published a scientific paper which is talking about policy and what actions they want to see in Australia on breast density. And Jennifer and I have been supporting them to do that work to help them bring that into the academic and scientific domain.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And as this field is obviously changing, I know that you've talked a bit about how you're navigating the change and how technology is impacting things. But given that you're a senior expert now, is a big part of your role mentoring the next generation of researchers in this field?
Yeah, that's something that I'm really passionate about, and I think, you know, one of the things I really want when I retire and I'm an old lady, is to look at the field and know that it's better for having had me in it.
Yeah.
And
well, I can say that's already happened. Yeah.
Thank you. But you know, I'm only one person.
Yeah.
And I can work hard and do all the things I want to do. But when you support others and help them do what they want to do, the impact of what I do is just magnified so much.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been working for a few years in career development at the University of Adelaide. I chaired the career development committee, and that was just so rewarding because every time somebody who we had supported had a win, I felt like I had had the win as well, and felt that, you know, and so, you know, I'm not the one that's staying up all night writing the grant application or, you know, working hard in the lab doing what they were doing, but their success then becomes, you know, the people that have supported our success as well, and this builds a community, you know, so we're not so much competing with each other, but we're working together and sharing each other's success. And that's been a really powerful part of the career development work. And so really wanting to bring that into the new university and build that community of collegiality, teamwork, supporting people, making sure that people who have faced structural barriers don't have those as such the impediment that they have been in the past as well. You know, we have this hugely diverse group of early career researchers, and we need to make sure that they have the opportunity to keep going with their career and become the diverse leadership that we need.
And within your university role, how broad is the group of people or the students and the future researchers that you work with? Is it just people in breast research, or is it people across a range of disciplines?
It's a huge range of disciplines. So our career development committee work was centred around health, health research, and so we had representatives from all of the different schools and institutes as part of that, and I learnt a lot, you know, just from talking to people in that committee about what they did. And now we want to expand that further. I have a lot to learn still about all of those different areas that are part of essentially the College of Health, and learn about what is going on in the different schools, centres and institutes, and who we can support. And, you know, I really strongly feel we have a really challenging set of problems to solve. You know, as we go on, health and our communities that we live in are becoming more complicated. And so our challenges are becoming more complicated, and we can't look at solving those unless we are working with a broad group. And that includes community and a broad group of collaborators in different fields. And it's such a privilege and a really enjoyable part of my job that I can reach out to any academic, really in any field, and engage them in the work. And we've done that in breast density, for example, and I've talked about ethics and epidemiology and community, and engineering and maths research has become part of our work as well, chemistry as well. That's, you know, learning from others is really, it makes my job more fun.
Yeah.
When I meet another academic at whatever career stage who has the expertise in something else, and learning about what they do and finding that way that we can combine our expertise together is where the fun is, but also where the innovation is.
Yeah, definitely. We're filming this at the start of 2026, just after the university merger. What are the main things that, with your work, what are the main directions that you want to go in with both your research and also with this diverse university role that you have?
Well, I really hope that we can build a strong collegial network across the university. It's such a big university. I think we need to start in the grassroots, or the individual areas, and build it from there. Probably at the same time building it from the top as well.
Yeah.
I see a lot of positivity and aspiration in my colleagues.
Yeah.
There are some frustrations as well, as we start to navigate the different things that don't necessarily work how we want them to.
So that's natural.
But also opportunity, because this is a whole new university, and there isn't, there might be the basic structure, but a lot of the finer detail hasn't been determined and is still very flexible and open. And so I think it's up to all of us to help shape it the way we want to.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like we do have that opportunity, not as individuals so much, but as each doing their own thing towards the whole.
Yeah. So when you started in policy research, that's going into a field that wasn't initially your area of expertise, your area of specialty, and it's a very complex area. How did you navigate a lot of that?
Yes, so when I started that, I was aware that it was a risky thing to be going into. I didn't have the background in it, and it was a big thing. It was going to be taking quite a lot of time, and that time was then not going to be spent on my biology research. Publications might suffer, citations, that kind of thing. I was aware that it could be, was it the right choice? I guess though, I felt that I had a responsibility to do it. And if I looked inside myself and didn't do it and went, oh, well, that's somebody else's job, I'll just keep doing my work, I would be failing myself, I guess, or not holding true to my own values. So I did feel like it was really something that I couldn't not do. But I was aware that it could be a risky thing to do. But I've never had a shortage of people who have helped. And, I didn't know about epidemiology or policy research or ethics, but I was able to reach out to people who did. And that's what made it possible.
Okay. Well, thank you, Wendy. I really appreciate the time. And I think you've helped a lot of people and will continue to do so.
Thank you very much.